Welcome everyone, back to the fifth lecture on our wonderful world of Jeor'n-Dith. I am your instructor Taishi, as always, and today we are covering the technologically advanced continent of Astlernaught in. To begin, Astlernaught is at the peak of the world in many a sense, and has at least half of its landmass covered in ice. It was also plagued by a terrible disease known as the Spellrot Plague, a disease that killed many novice spellcasters and even a few of the more powerful experienced ones as well. Because of this disease, the inhabitants of Astlernaught have developed their technology rather than their magical prowess, leading them to be rather underdeveloped in the arts of magic, but far ahead of any of the other continents in terms of technology. There is far more to discuss about the Spellrot Plague, however it will be covered later in this lecture. The first location in today's lecture is the Clockwork Tower is an enormous structure in the vast snowy expanses of Astlernaught. Many different types of rooms are held inside the tower, such as the Second Grand Arcana, which is another topic that will require its own lecture. The Timeholders Observatory, a laboratory that was used by the strongest chronomancer in the history of Jeor'n-Dith, whose name has, quite ironically, been lost to time. However, their notes are still scrawled in magic across the space of the room. Another place inside this tower is the Automaton's Arena, where constructs or other mechanical or mechanically enhanced creatures can come to test their might against other creatures of the same type. Next is the temporal gardens, gardens that allow one to see the entire life cycle of a plant in mere minutes. Penultimately, and my favorite place in the tower, the stopwatch cafes. Surrounded by the temporal gardens, these cafes have powerful spells cast on them that slow time while inside, allowing for me to make all of my lesson plans in record time, along with any other activities that have a quickly approaching deadline. And last but not least, the Hourglass Atrium, a backwards flowing hourglass that counts down to a new year. With that being said, we have covered the Clockwork Tower, and we'll be moving on to our next topic. The Ethereal Lich Gate is a tunnel that, once finished, will allow the average person to travel through the Astral Sea and to the different planes as if they were simply visiting a separate town. The planes are something that we will have to discuss later, once again in a lecture of their own at a later date. Currently, it is under construction, but it should be done within the next 50 or so years, which, depending on your ancestry, might mean that it won't be accessible to you or your generation. But your children might very well be able to travel to planes easier than traveling to a different continent, provided they are already on Astronaut. If you do decide to visit the gate, you should be able to sense the ambient magic flowing from it. However, if you do bring someone who isn't so magically inclined, they may not feel the magic, as they have not developed the sixth sense of magic detection as those who use magic have. The gate has been opened a few times, however, doing those few tests, the strange creatures that haven't been seen anywhere else crawl out. They appear as blank white humanoid creatures, standing between 7 and 10 feet tall, that are void of any other defining features. They have been dubbed enigmas, as that is what they are. The construction is not finished, and there is not much more to mention about this gate, and we will be moving on to our next topic. The quantum nexus reactor is a major breakthrough even in the scientific community of Astronaut. The core of this nexus is created solely out of energy derived from the primeval plane, built in the middle of the glacial cap. The underground facility that holds this incredible feat of humanoid ingenuity is buried under multiple layers of steel and even more layers of ice. It also holds many rooms that act as both bedding and research stations for the researchers of the reactor. Other facilities around the continent have teleportation circles that lead back to the main facility. If you can, I strongly recommend visiting and asking for a tour. I will warn that it is quite expensive, but it is a very in-depth tour that goes into all of the intricacies of the many facilities. The Quantum Nexus reactor is a fairly new creation that does not have much else to say on it. Thus, we will be moving on to the next subject. The Rotting Sanctum was previously an awe-inspiring temple that studied magical items. One day, the analysts at the temple mysteriously broke one of the artifacts they were working on and released a curse upon the world. This curse is better known now as the Spellrot Plague. Spellrot doesn't normally affect non-magical creatures or any objects. However, this one time it did, likely because it was placed at the epicenter. When the curse first broke out, it killed everyone within the temple, even those without magic, and destroyed the temple, leaving it in its current state. The exact reason as to why the breaking of this artifact started the Spellrot Plague is unknown. However, there have been many speculations, and, once again, while I don't like giving out information that isn't 100% confirmed, I do prefer to give available information to you to act as a jumping-off point for you to craft your own theories. One speculation is that there was a demon inside the artifact that released this disease upon the world. Another is that the analysts angered the god Jeor'n-Dith of pain, who brought pain down upon the world. That is all there is to be said about the sanctum, as it is so dangerous even for non-magical persons to visit. So we will be moving on to our next section. The ruins of Elf are ruins sitting near the edge of the glacial cap inside the frozen wasteland. The researchers that worked on these ruins have managed to date them back to tens of thousands of years, making them older than the beginning of the unified writing era, and by proxy, the common language. Despite their age, they are incredibly well preserved and advanced. You might feel the ambient magic off of these ruins as well, as they are coated in a magical aura and many strange symbols that, through testing, have been shown not to be the cause of the magic, but might be hinting towards something in our future. Despite the harsh climate, many new species of flora and fauna have started to show themselves and thrive in the environment due to the magic surrounding the ruins. Many of the creatures of this environment simply appear to be different species of already existing animals, such as polar owl bears or freezing gnolls. However, one of the plants that grows within the ruins has magical properties to both combat and harness the cold. At this point, you might think that it doesn't make sense for a civilization to settle inside a glacial cap. However, when they did settle, it was likely that the cap was much smaller, and they were in one of the more livable areas of Astlernaught. That and there was likely a material of some use back then that has since either been forgotten about, overshadowed, or altogether removed from this location or public knowledge. Now, that is everything we can fit into our lecture on Astronaut. Next week we will cover South Torn. I hope to see you there, and until then, I wish you all well. Can't stop, won't stop, running to the bag. You lose, I've been running, shit, no, I can't come in last. Can't stop, won't stop, running to the bag. I've been working too long, no, there ain't no time for naps. Can't stop, won't stop, running to the bag. I ain't waiting for a handout.